You're 30 days into your baby's life. They can't walk. They can't talk. They can't feed themselves or tell you what they need, or even hold their own head up properly. And yet right now, inside that tiny skull, something is happening that will never happen again. At this speed, at this scale, at this level of intensity for the rest of their entire life, your baby's brain is growing by 250,000 neurons every single minute. Let that land for a second. 250,000 new brain cells every minute, while they sleep, while they feed, while they stare at the ceiling fan like it's the most fascinating thing they've ever seen. The first 1,000 days of your child's life, from the moment of conception to their second birthday, is the single most important period of brain development in all of human existence. Not the school years, not the teenage years, not even the toddler years, the first 1,000 days. And most parents have no idea what is actually happening during that time, which means most parents have no idea how much they are already shaping it. That changes today. Let's start at the very beginning. Before your baby is even born, the brain is already building itself. At just 3 weeks after conception, before most women even know they are pregnant, the neural tube begins to form. This is the structure that will eventually become the brain and spinal cord. By the time you are 8 weeks pregnant, your baby's brain is producing neurons at a rate that is almost impossible to comprehend. Hundreds of thousands per minute, day after day, week after week. By the time your baby is born, they have approximately 100 billion neurons. 100 billion. That is roughly the same number as stars in the Milky Way galaxy. But here is what makes the newborn brain so extraordinary and so different from an adult brain. Those 100 billion neurons are mostly unconnected. They are waiting. They are ready. But they need experience to wire themselves together. And this is the part that changes everything for you as a parent. Because the brain does not come pre-wired. It wires itself based on what it encounters in the world. Every time your baby hears your voice, a connection forms. Every time you make eye contact and smile, a connection forms. Every time you pick them up when they cry, a connection forms. Every time you name the thing they are looking at, a connection forms. These connections are called synapses, and in the first 3 years of life, your child's brain will form up to 1 million new synaptic connections every single second. 1 million per second. This is not a metaphor. This is not an exaggeration. This is what neuroscientists have measured and documented and studied for decades. And the connections that form most often become permanent. The ones that are never used get pruned away. The brain is ruthlessly efficient. It keeps what it uses and cuts what it doesn't. This process is called synaptic pruning, and it is one of the most important things to understand about early brain development. Think of it like a garden. In the early years, the brain grows wildly, vines and branches shooting out in every direction, making every possible connection it might ever need. Then, gradually, the gardener, which is experience, comes in and trims away the connections that are not being used, leaving the pathways that have been strengthened through repetition. What you water grows. What you neglect fades. This means that what your baby experiences in the first 1,000 days is not just passing time. It is literally determining the physical structure of their brain. The pathways being built right now, for language, for emotion, for attention, for trust, for resilience, those pathways are being shaped by every single interaction your baby has with the world around them. Now let's talk about what this actually looks like in your day-to-day life. Because most parents think brain development requires special tools, expensive toys, black and white flashcards, classical music playing in the nursery, educational programs on television. And while none of those things are harmful, none of them are what the science says your baby's brain actually needs most. What your baby's brain needs most is you. Specifically, it needs what researchers call serve and return interactions. This is the single most important concept in early brain science, and yet almost no parent has heard of it. Serve and return works like this. Your baby does something. They look at your face, they make a sound, they reach toward something, they show you an expression. That is the serve. And you return it. You look back. You respond to the sound. You name what they are reaching for. You mirror the expression back to them with warmth and engagement. This back and forth, this conversational tennis match between parent and baby, is what builds the neural architecture of the developing brain. Every serve and return exchange strengthens the pathways for language, for social connection, for emotional regulation, for executive function. Every time you respond to your baby's cues, you are telling their brain that the world is safe, that communication works, that they matter. And every time those exchanges are missing, not occasionally, not once in a while, but consistently and repeatedly missing, the brain registers that too, not as trauma necessarily, but as information. The world does not respond. My signals do not work. I am not seen. Researchers have studied this extensively. The Harvard Center on the Developing Child has documented that the quality and quantity of serve and return interactions in the first 3 years of life is one of the strongest predictors of a child's cognitive ability, emotional health, and even physical health outcomes decades later. This is not small science. This is some of the most robust findings in all of developmental research. Now let's talk about stress. Because the first 1,000 days are also when the brain's stress response system is being calibrated. And this is where many parents don't realize how much their own nervous system is shaping their child's. When your baby is born, their stress response system, the part of the brain that decides how to react to threat, uncertainty, discomfort, is immature and undeveloped. It relies almost entirely on the caregiver to regulate it. This is called co-regulation, and it is not optional. A baby cannot self-regulate. They do not have the neural machinery to do it yet. They need you to be the external regulator until their own system develops enough to take over. What this means in practice is that your calm literally becomes your baby's calm. When you pick up a crying baby, when you speak in a low, soft voice, when you hold them close and breathe steadily, you are not spoiling them. You are not creating dependence. You are building the neurological foundation for their ability to self-regulate later in life. The research on this is unambiguous. Babies whose cries are responded to consistently and warmly develop stronger stress regulation systems, more secure attachment, and better emotional health across their entire lives. The opposite is also true. When babies experience prolonged unresponded stress, when they cry and no one comes, when they are frightened and not soothed, when their emotional signals are repeatedly ignored, the stress response system gets calibrated to high alert. The brain learns that the world is threatening, that it must be vigilant, that calm is not safe, and this calibration, set in the first 1,000 days, can persist for decades. This is not about being a perfect parent. It is not about responding every single second with flawless attunement. Research shows that parents only need to be attuned about 30% of the time, and that the ruptures and repairs, the moments when you miss the cue and then catch it, are actually what teaches your baby that relationships are resilient. That disconnection is temporary, that people come back. What matters is the overall pattern: warm, responsive, and consistent over time. Let's talk about language now. Because what happens to your baby's brain in the first 1,000 days around language will shape how they communicate, how they think, how they reason, and how they read for the rest of their life. By the time a child reaches age 3, children from households where parents talk to them frequently have heard 30 million more words than children from households where verbal interaction is minimal. This is the famous 30 million word gap, and its effects on vocabulary, reading comprehension, and academic outcomes can be measured well into school age and beyond. But it is not just about the number of words. It is about the quality of the language interaction. Talking at your baby is not the same as talking with your baby. What matters is the conversational back and forth, the narration of everyday life, the songs and the rhymes and the repeated words that help the brain begin to map sound onto meaning. When you talk to your baby while changing their nappy, "Now I'm lifting your legs, there we go." Does that feel better? You are not talking to yourself. You are literally building language pathways in your child's brain. When you name what you see on a walk, look, a dog, a big brown dog, you are laying the neural groundwork for vocabulary. When you read the same book 10 times and your baby reaches for the page before you turn it, that anticipation is the brain making a prediction. And making predictions is one of the highest cognitive functions the brain performs. Sing to your baby, talk to your baby, narrate your day. Not because it feels productive, or because some parenting book told you to, but because your voice is the most powerful brain-building tool your child will ever encounter in their first 1,000 days. Nothing, not a single toy or program or app, comes close. And finally, let's talk about what all of this means in the long term. Because the first 1,000 days do not just shape the brain for babyhood. They set the trajectory for everything that follows. The neural pathways built in the first 3 years become the foundation on which all future learning is built. Language development in year 1 predicts reading ability in year 5. Secure attachment in year 1 predicts emotional resilience in year 10. Stress regulation developed in infancy predicts mental health outcomes in adulthood. The science on this is not soft or speculative. It is among the most replicated findings in all of developmental neuroscience. This does not mean that what happens after the first 1,000 days doesn't matter. The brain remains plastic and capable of growth and change throughout life. But it does mean that the foundation laid in these early days matters enormously. It means that what you do in these ordinary moments, the feeds, the nappy changes, the walks, the bath times, the bedtime routines, is not just caregiving, it is brain architecture. You are not just keeping your baby alive and safe, you are building a human mind. And here is what I want you to take from this. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to do more. You do not need to buy anything or schedule anything or optimize anything. You just need to be present, be warm, and be responsive. Talk to them. Look at them. Respond to them. Come back when you miss it, because your baby's brain is already building itself. It just needs you to show up in the ordinary, imperfect, exhausted, beautiful, everyday moments you are already living in. That is enough. That has always been enough. If this helped you understand what is happening inside your baby's brain right now, subscribe to this channel for real brain science, for real parents, in language that actually makes sense. Drop a comment and tell me how old your baby is right now. I read every single one.